Dhruva Jaishankar is with us. He is fellow Foreign Policy, Brookings, India, and we are discussing the Modi-Trump summit on June 26th. Dhruva has just written a fine piece, actually, both on Brookings on the website, looking ahead to this visit about India in Donald Trump's America, but also Dhruva and Tanvi have co-authored a piece today. And I'm going to start with the last line of that, where they say that the highlight for Trump Modi's visit provides an opportunity to highlight for Trump the value of an India that is willing to buy military equipment. The reason I start with that is because it's clear, it's precise, it's a little different from just plain wonkery. So Dhruva, explain to the common man as well as to the expert, how could this look, what would success look like in this visit?
Sure. Well, I mean, we also emphasize a bunch of other things, not just buying military equipment. It's not just a commercial transaction, but also an India that's willing to play a bigger burden sharing role, that's willing to talk more frankly with the US than perhaps on shared strategic concerns, and do a number of other things. So I think it's a much more comprehensive relationship than simply a defense trade relationship, although that is one important factor. Defense trade, I think, represents a particularly important and potentially exciting area for the two countries to cooperate, for the simple reason that the two governments have a lot more control over it. It's not something that is, it's not about investment flows. It's not about ensuring that two businesses are able to tie up and the business environment is sufficient. It's really, a lot of this is going on at a government-to-government level. And it's an area where both leaderships can claim to create jobs. So it's politically very useful as well. So I think that for all these reasons, I think that's an interesting and exciting area to look at, and an area of natural convergence for Trump's America and Modi's India, both of which Trump wants an America first policy for his domestic policy, and Modi wants a make in India kind of vision for India's transformation. But there are a number of other things that I think are useful, that would be useful to look for at this relationship. I think a lot of questions are being asked as to why now. Modi has visited the United States 4 times. Why another visit at this time? The fact is that the US is India's most important bilateral relationship. If you don't just look at the trade figures, if you look at investment, remittances, the size of the Indian diaspora, the science and technology collaboration that takes place, the energy relationship that is now burgeoning, defense, and then strategic coordination. If you take all of these things together, this is really the most important bilateral relationship. And Modi needs to deal with whoever the president of the US is, whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else. So there's a reason, there's a logic to meeting relatively early in a new presidency, but also to, India is also not a big concern for the thing. India is not a major adversary, nor is Trump going after India to play a bigger role in terms of defense or anything. In fact, India wants to play a bigger role. So there are a lot of advantages, and in many ways this is a blank slate. So I would look to the two leaders trying to set a positive tone for the relationship moving forward.
All right. So just to recap a few things from what you said, this is military deals. The reason you mention them it's short gestation. There is clarity on what each side brings to the table. It's a good lollipop for people. Especially in a time when foreign policy seems to be moving towards short gestation transactions rather than a longer term view from one side or the other, depends. So we'll move on to what you call a more normal America and hedging against that. So if the visit goes well, so far so good, fine. But the fact also remains that Prime Minister Modi has been traveling a lot. So that speaks for itself. So explain to our viewers what you mean by a more normal America or American exceptionalism.
Right. So, I think that, why is it that the US became a superpower? I think that's in ways the underlying question to all of this. I think, I make the case that there are a few things that actually made the United States exceptional. One, when it was founded, it was a democracy much earlier than European democracies. People think of America as a young country, but in fact, it's than anyone in Europe or in Asia or any other part of the world for that matter. Two, it actually tried to project itself as a global power. There was a big debate about this. It took time. But after World War II, it said, due to its self-interest, it wanted to actually shape the world and set up institutions that would project American influence around the world, for better or for worse. But that was quite unusual. The Soviet Union tried the same thing. The third thing that really set the United States apart was the immigration regime. And this existed from the late 19th century up to the 1920s. And then there was a 40-year break. And then again in the 1960s. And that's when, particularly for Indians, it was really that wave of immigration after 1968 that made, despite political differences between India and the US, that really created the foundation for the India-US relationship. So those are the elements of what I like to talk when I talk about American exceptionalism. I think it was the set of conscious decisions that were made over time to make it an attractive place and so forth. Trump is doing, in some ways, trying to present a power. It's not trying to promote democracy or governance. And maybe America should build walls and barriers to entry, increase the. So you're seeing America, in some ways, just him. There's the political circumstances that he arose from. You're seeing some of the in America, in addition to the right. India finds itself in this at this juncture to accommodate a more, and it remains to be seen whether this is a permanent shift or whether it could be that this only lasts a few years in America being projecting itself as an. And so under this, what I argue is that Modi must continue to engage, any Indian government must continue to engage with the United States because for all the reasons I mentioned. And it's part time soon. But that being said, in each of the partnerships that help India achieve its objectives, some of it for domestic transformation in Russia and China.
Okay.
And its regional security, Yeah.
Yeah.
So other partners, basically.
Okay. You've also written about Pakistan, and this always comes up every time there's an Indo-US summit meeting, and you've talked about how India will continue its engagement, but may consider possibilities of working through Beijing, which now enjoys more leverage with Pakistan than the United States. I'm glad you've brought that up. Where do things stand now, as they are?
Well, I mean, the India-Pakistan relationship last year has been in a state of about July. They were for India to try and they didn't go very far, but we're at a stalemate right now for reasons. That being said, the U.S. leverage went considerably. Aid after about 2010, 2011 has actually significantly dropped military assistance. Meanwhile, China has significantly increased its investment in loans to Pakistan. That's a road project. India has very, very deep Pakistan relationship that dates back and was originally, forged. It was a balancing alliance, and as part of that, China including transferring technology to India. So, as a deal of faith currently that China will concerns when it comes to terrorism based, that will change. But I find that the way to put this at Washington.
Okay, the H-1B question, no matter whether it comes up or it doesn't come up, the fact is that the backlash is there. It's been made official during a White House background briefing. Although when you look at what Trump has actually said in his executive order, it's just a tiny paragraph. But the White House background briefing was really long and lengthy. Now, that's one thing. But the other side is that it's already a very highly regulated visa. So a reboot rather than completely getting rid of it. Does that look imminent, a reboot?
I came to the United States on H-1B visa, and it is a very tightly regulated. I think just one, a lot of changes, legislative changes in the USA outside the control of the White House. Some of the sentiment has been building up over time amongst both Republicans and Democrats. In fact, some of the lead of the bill in Congress are Democrats, in fact. But you're absolutely right. The White House has indicated that in terms of tightening some of this. To some extent, I mean, it's, Indian and US companies that use this to get a lot of highly skilled non-immigrants from India to the United States. They enjoyed a good run, and that run is coming to an end, and we just need to know what that looks like. But beyond the point, I mean, obviously you will see the Indian government try to push back against some of the have taken hold, and there are a lot of misconceptions that have taken hold. The belief that this is for body shopping and so forth was true, and some of that is less true today than that. So we could see the gradual evolution of the H-1B visa. I would expect that this will be between the two leaders on this.
Okay.
It's a very tricky issue. Does try to raise it up. I suspect it will actually draw attention to something that may lead to a backlash. So I suspect that this will be raised.
Okay. Another question which I wanted to bring up earlier. So we do know that at the Paris Air Show, the Tatas have signed off with Lockheed. Now, there still is not much clarity on whether this is a deal, it is going to happen. It's something like an intent. What is this really? What is it?
Sure. I think we have two things happening at the same time. One is a top-down effort. There was a plan which advanced under Defense Minister Parakar and the current Defense Minister Jaitley. And this was basically a way to get boost the private sector, in collaboration with external partners, not just from the United States, but elsewhere. This is a plan that has been drawn up. People are still looking at it, coming over the details of what it means for how defense companies can operate in the Indian environment. It represents in some ways a step in the right direction, and in terms of diversifying India's own manufacturing base in the defense sector. What specifics of that deal, but what that does indicate is a tie-up between these two companies and their joint collaboration in bidding for future projects. And Lockheed in particular is trying is a candidate for the single-engine fighter aircraft bid that the Indian Air Force is seeking, as is the Gripen, a plane manufactured by Saab. So I think that this represents, at the same time, something else is happening, which is from the ground up, which is Indian defense companies are entering into, irrespective of the Indian government, almost into deals with foreign supply parts and seem like very mundane things, but entering into supply chains for the global and so you're seeing some of this happen in Tata. I mean, Tata is large companies like that. So I think that's a very different story, and that's happening.
Okay.
Of the top-down deals.
So what this means is that India is still in the market. It's not like this one deal is all it is. India is still shopping. And from what we know, it's in the market for at least about 200 fighter planes because the MiG-21s are accident prone and old. And so this is just one step, and there will be more, obviously.
Step in that direction, saying that Tata Rafale, but it's the whole number of aircraft that are going out of the Indian Air. Just gave an interview where he spoke about 4 combat aircraft that they will eventually have. The Rafale from France, manufactured aircraft, and then a 4th one to be seen.
All right. So, Dhruva, wrap it up for us. Give us a high-level view of June 26th, of this visit. It's not just a first summit. It's the first time they're meeting ever. And a lot of people have said it's a good thing they're not meeting on the sidelines of something else. So it's just them. It's just one-on-one. So that itself is a good thing. Tell us from where you sit, what do you see?
I think it's indicative of the growing relationship for both countries that this meeting is taking place at all. There used to be very long gaps between leadership summits between India and the US, and it's now becoming routine. And I think the keenness to go relatively early in the new visit, and the keenness on the part of the White House indicate that.
Okay.
Positive tone. I wouldn't expect a lot of nitty-gritty in deals, but for I think in a joint message in the joint on the honest possible energy, but overall, I think in very broad brushstrokes, that India Trump's efforts admit that it deals that benefit them, and that it's not it's willing to play in the region and
Okay. Thanks so much, Dhruva. And we'll just tell our viewers once more, in case you're just joining in at the end of this broadcast, this is Dhruva Jaishankar on the other half of your screen, Fellow Foreign Policy at Brookings, India. And he's talking on the Modi-Trump summit. You can go back to this conversation, or if you prefer a long read, we'll also be posting the link to his paper, special paper ahead of this visit. So you can go and check that out. He's also been writing along with Tanvi Madan, his colleague, in Alignment. So all those links will be on the top sheet. Thank you, Dhruva. Thanks for joining in. It's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks.